That's a lot of power for a small power station.
Yeah. And
small as in size and weight.
Right. So here's the other interesting thing. I did a quick little calculation that I'd like to share. So the B2000 is, for all intents and purposes, call it 4.5 times the capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also just 4.5 times the price.
Oh,
so if you scaled up the EcoFlow and kept the same price per watt hour, for example, it basically would be the same.
I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. Yeah. So it's really not a bad price.
No,
when you kind of look at it and do the comparison. Welcome to I Like Batteries, a show where we explore the world of batteries. I'm Mike Muldoon.
And I'm Jeff Lynch. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Jeff. It's good to have a good morning, and it's we talked about this in pre-show. But it's a rainy morning.
It is. That's fine though.
It's okay.
We need the rain.
We need the rain. Yeah, and it's been great solar. I have to tell you, I've had the EcoFlow Delta plugged in. It's plugged into the River Max that I have, and the Blue Eddy's been powering off that. And I didn't tell you this in pre-show, but my son had an injury to his foot, so he couldn't ride his bike. So he's been using the scooter more. So we've been charging the scooter off of the grid, so to speak, off of each of these, and it's been really good to top that off. So it's been a very, very
perfect
green time. I love it. Yeah.
It's funny, every time you say off of the grid, you really mean like off grid.
Off grid.
But
off of the grid actually is correct too.
Is it? Because off of the grid to me sounds like you're saying you're sucking juice off of the grid.
I follow you.
As opposed to off grid. It's a small thing. And
we're off grid though. Just to be clear to our listeners, and
off
to
grid.
be clear, such as right now, this show, my lights, microphone, we're off grid.
And the scooter.
I'm not riding that right now. I mean, someday, maybe we'll do that. It seems a little unsafe, but we might do those things.
You'd hear more wind noise, theoretically.
There would be more wind noise, and that's a good segue to heat waves.
Yes, heat waves.
Because we've had some, at least here and other parts of the country too. Do you know anything about that or any articles that might be interesting?
Yeah, of course. We came across an article from last month titled California Grid Breezes Through Heat Wave Due to Renewables and Batteries. So the article begins with a very interesting statement and then a little bit of fact coming after that. So no rolling blackouts or grid emergencies as California continues on a path to a carbon-free grid. Several strategies, including upgrades to vulnerable parts of the grid, but the key enabler is more clean energy, especially solar, which is not a surprise. And above all, and this is why we like this particular article, because we like batteries, that battery storage now equivalent to 5 very large nuclear power plants. So they have 10,000 plus megawatts of battery storage in California.
That's a big battery.
That's a lot of batteries.
Yeah. Well, and you're seeing this more and more, is that the off-grid capacity, I did say that correctly, off-grid capacity.
You did, yes. Nicely
continues to get bigger and bigger. And that's partly because battery technology continues to get better and better.
It does indeed.
Yeah. And one of the things that most of the time when we talk about batteries, we're talking about lithium-based batteries for the most part. I don't think they said whether these are lithium-based, but it'd be a fair assumption that these are lithium-based batteries.
Oh, just at this point, yeah. I mean,
where you could
probably lithium iron phosphate due to their not needing to be moved around, so they're maybe a little heavier, but they have better life cycle.
Agreed. But one of those things, and we've talked about this with our friends at Mangrove Lithium who refine lithium, is that, you got two ways. You either hard rock mine lithium or you desalinate it. And coming up with different battery chemistries is something that's important. And there was an article in New Atlas that talked about an 18650 battery, which we really like those. Those are
one of the OG original favorites.
I know. And Jeff, just for our listeners to remind them, like, what does that mean if you look at 18650?
Yeah, all of these digits are significant in this number, and we're not going to go down that road again. But 18650 actually describes the physical dimensions of the cell. So it's 18 millimeters wide, or sort of in diameter, I should say, 65 millimeters tall, and the 0 means it is a round cell.
That's right. Along the 0 means round. Just and that goes back to a battery day thing where he like dropped the 0 and I was like, well, it's round, so it has to have the 0. That's kind of the convention. But what they're talking about is a 18650 sized potassium-ion battery that aims to fill the lithium gap. And this is important because potassium tends to be a little bit more prevalent, I should say, than lithium. It's easier, and we've talked about iron air batteries and different types of batteries that are coming out. But I think these potassium batteries could be good because it's changing the cathode material, right, from lithium to potassium. And they're saying it's safer, it quickly charges, and it's more efficient. And I would agree completely, it's more sustainable as we look at these type of activities. I really do think when you look at these, they're saying it's they can operate at 3.7 volts.
Yep, that's the nominal voltage of a normal lithium-ion 18650. Right.
So we're not apple to apple, but I guess I'd say lithium to potassium, right? Comparative there, and they're on the path to gravimetric energy density, which we'll kind of get to. This is important a bit later in the show, which is 160 to 180 watt hours per kilogram. So that's important. And for our listeners, that what we want to talk about is energy density. So that refers to how much energy can you store per kilogram. And that's important because earlier lithium batteries are heavier. So you have a car, you have even a portable power station, it's heavier to carry around more energy. I think that's the simplistic way of thinking about it. Exactly. If you want to look at it. And lightweight, high energy is really what we're shooting for, because that makes it easier to transport it. That makes it easier to drive with it. It makes it easier to figure out how to be able to utilize it in different ways for different means. And a couple episodes ago, we talked about even how these small coolers are able to ship medications, lab results, and you wouldn't want something that's extremely heavy with a battery in it to do this cooling. You would want something that's lighter. So I do think that we will continue to see better lithium-based technology in terms of, we'll get to this later about solid state, but also get better other chemicals to, I like how they say, fill the gap, right? You're still going to have other types of batteries like your 18650. I don't think that battery is going to go away for a long time. It's kind of become a standard.
Oh, yeah.
And what other chemicals can you use? So this is pretty neat.
Right. Like we had found out well over 170 episodes ago, I think, something like that, when my Dyson stick vacuum decided not to charge anymore. And I ended up opening up the battery pack, and by golly, there was a bunch of 18650s in there. So that's the sort of thing, like a lot of these portable, vacuums and small things. Like, I think Mike and I have gotten pretty good. It was like, yeah, the batteries are clearly there. And yep, those look to be about, 2 rows of 18650s. So it's kind of fun to have had that experience.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking about California, you're starting to see more cities start to roll out some battery storage and batteries abilities with that. So one of those is that Melbourne, Australia, it says the title of this article from Fast Company's 4 Lessons from Melbourne on How Cities Can Build Neighborhood Batteries That People Love. And we've talked about this ability for a neighborhood to have, and we've seen this in some newer constructions and developments, is how you've got these neighborhood batteries that are starting to be there. Clearly, cities are rolling these batteries out. They put something in here that I think is important, and this part of this says the battery is visible and fun. Making the entire process visible to the community both before, during, and after installation is paramount. The batteries are roughly the size of 4 refrigerators, and they can store 354 kilowatt hours. This is equivalent to about 30 household battery systems. The highly visible battery in the neighborhood is a great conversation starter for families and friends. This is how cities can build community awareness and education about the transition to renewable energy. Furthermore, have fun with it. Melbourne's first installation battery system covered commissioned by street art, which local artists came up and said, let's get energized. So I do think making batteries cool is important part of helping people feel engaged in this movement, so to speak. Because I mean, clearly we think batteries are cool. We've done the show for a fair amount of time, but it's surprising where you just talk to people you don't know. It's like, oh, I have a battery podcast. Let me do it. Like, well, what do you have? And I'll pull out a power station and show it to them and plug things in. And this whole summer, all my smoothies that I've done before I work out, I pretty much have a little Cuisinart blender that's for one smoothie, and I use on it my Blue Eddy EB3A most of the time. Just happens to be the one I pick to be able to do that. And somebody say, so you haven't made a smoothie on the grid? I have not made a smoothie on the grid pretty much all summer. So I'm just kind of expanding my own ability to be able to continually generate my own power and then utilize it. And it feels good to do that. It feels good to somewhat grow your own power from your own solar panels and have it, like right now, yeah, it's raining, but there's a ton of storage that's sitting there because we've had such sunny days.
Right. And the EB3A, despite its less than stellar name, is a great power station, by the way.
Oh, yeah. 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 It's a great power station and great price point. And that I would say that's a good segue to something that we've been talking about for a while, which is solid state batteries. And here's the fact, Jeff. You can now buy one on Amazon. And I want to give credit to Matt Farrell on Undecided. I was listening to his podcast, listening to his YouTube channel. Matt actually lives in Massachusetts. So I guess I'd say he's a New Englander, which is good, and built, and he does an amazing job. If you want to listen to something or watch it, he's got a podcast, but he also has a YouTube channel. Excellent information, and he basically broke this and purchased one of these Yoshino solid state portable power stations. He bought the smaller one, but did talk about the larger ones, and I think we'll talk about the larger ones here. And as I said, these are solid state batteries that have that energy density that we're talking about. And this has been theoretically out there, but this is the first time I've actually seen something that you, myself, or our listeners could actually go purchase. So you want to talk about these and why both of us think these are quote unquote really cool?
Yeah. First of all, just as a quick refresher. So a solid state battery and the difference between it and a normal battery is that it uses a solid electrolyte. So instead of having electrolyte and a separator, which adds volume to the battery, that's now compressed basically, and it again increases the density and makes them lighter. So that's the brief history. Plenty of articles on solid state batteries. The other thing about solid state, which goes even further than what we've been talking about before, so we've seen this transition from like various chemistries of lithium ion, and then to lithium iron phosphate batteries, right? So we're talking like 1,000 charge cycles to go from new to 80%. And then lithium iron phosphate are like 2,000 to 3,000 charge cycles to that. So now we're talking like 4,000 charge cycles for a solid state battery, which if you're recharging it to full every day is just shy of 11 years.
Yeah.
To 80%, right? So I mean, it's like, it's not done at 80%. It's just 80% of its capacity. So again, it's a battery, so it does lose capacity over time, but that's a long time.
It's a long time. And I, as somebody who has a bunch of power stations and uses them, right now I even have my good old Rab Powers right now powering the lights. It's rare, even with these lights on for a day, that I'm discharging it fully in a day. So I would say there's the theoretical in terms of how much you're using these, and then there's what you're really going to do. So for most use cases, I think once every 2 days is even a stretch.
That is a stretch. So I haven't charged my, although you use yours more than I use mine, but I was working out in the yard the other day. We were installing a path down to the water with logs on the side, but it's downhill a little bit. So every once in a while we had some 4x4 posts. So I stacked 2 of those, to make a step to go down. But I was securing them with rebar. So, would drill a hole, 2 holes through each of the 4x4s and drive a piece of rebar through. But because you never know how deep you can do the rebar and whatever, so I bought like 4-foot sections of rebar. So I would pound them in, and then I have to cut them off. So I'm like, oh, so I got my grinder out and my EcoFlow river and brought it down, and I think it was probably, it wasn't quite 100%, but it was, just might as well have been. Didn't even use 20% of the battery. And I cut, probably 20 different cuts, and it does, it takes a little bit to cut through a piece of rebar with one of those grinder tools. But again, it was just like, yep, hauled it out there. Didn't have to deal with extension cords or whatever. Basically just, off we went. And it's one of that sort of freedom of like, oh, I'll just put it back in the garage and it'll hang out until next time I need it. Right.
No, I mean, that's a great use case. And I think it's also to think about. I'll use it for my EB3A, just different power station, different brand. But I know the blender uses about 180 watts, but it goes up and down based upon if it incurs some frozen fruit like I'm putting in there. But I think that was at 100, and I probably used it for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's now at maybe 78%. Because even when you're using something like a grinder that uses a lot of power, you're only using it for maybe 30 seconds at most to cut rebar. Yeah. So it's that watts and time, which is why we talk about watt hours, to be able to use. So even if we just said, hey, you're recharging this once every 2 days, and you've got something like the Yoshino, and it's got 4,000 charge cycles, I mean, that's going to last you almost 20 years before it goes down to 8%. I think that's a good ROI.
Good. Yeah,
I mean,
pretty good.
But even more importantly, I think, is size and energy density. So you want to talk about that? So let's just, actually, that's a great segue to exactly one of the things we did. You had to carry down your EcoFlow river.
Yes.
And that's a 288 watt hour power station.
Yes.
And it's 11 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not,
however,
and it's not huge. I don't have the exact dimensions, but it's like, 12 by 6 by 7 or something like that. It's
a small cooler. One of those. That's how if our listeners are kind of thinking about it, it's one of those small like igloo or
and the reason Mike and I both have rivers, but Mike upgraded to the max by adding another battery, so his capacity is double mine. But it's 600 watts with a 1200 watt surge. So for such a small unit, it actually has quite a bit of capacity, to power things with larger loads, basically.
And right now, you can still pick those up. It's $349. I don't remember what we paid, because I'll be honest, it was like one of those keep watching and searching for the deals.
Mine was type of thing. Under 300, I think, when I bought it.
Yeah,
but I've had it a couple of years now. So.
Yeah, it was exactly. Let's compare that to the Yoshino solid state portable power station. And what we're going to compare this is to their B2000. It's I would say the middle. They have a smaller one, this is the middle, and then there's a larger one in terms of capacity. So the B2000 SST has 1,326 watt hours and 2,000 watts of inverter power. That's a lot of power for what I would say a smaller power station, because, Jeff, the important thing here is that same power station with that much power weighs 11 pounds. It's the same amount of weight as your EcoFlow river.
Right.
Yeah. And your EcoFlow river, because that's a lithium-ion battery, is only going to get you about 500 charge cycles versus 4,000. That's why we're going to bring in the next part,
which is the price of
this. Yeah, this is the critical part. So it's like, yes, we're going to completely, if we look at watt hours per kilogram, the Yoshino solid state is doing amazing. However, right now, $1,599 on Amazon. It's pricey. But it's almost always that point of when a new technology hits the market, it's pricey. And I'm sure they haven't got the ability to truly scale this completely over time. But, I mean, that's a lot of power for a small power station.
Yeah. And
Small as in size and weight.
Right. So here's the other interesting thing. I did a quick little calculation that I'd like to share. So the B2000 is, for all intents and purposes, call it 4.5 times the capacity. But it's also just 4.5 times the price.
Oh,
so if you scaled up the EcoFlow and kept the same price per watt hour, for example, it basically would be the same.
That's I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. Yeah. So it's really not a bad price.
No,
when you kind of look at it and do the comparison.
And then you add up the AC outlets and the 2,000 watt inverter, and well, now you're
right. That's a lot of inverter power, and it's a good amount of it. The reality is 1,326 watt hours is a good amount of watt hours. I mean, that's going to last you a fair amount of time. I guess in some ways I would look at this and say battery technology getting better, and shout out to good old Tom Bishop at Pale Blue, using these every day. In fact, I'm using them more now because the 445 run requires a headlamp now that we've kind of gone away from the summer solstice. So starting to use it more. So recharging those Pale Blue AAA batteries in the headlamp more. So it is that piece of saying, hey, I'm going to go from a single-use battery to I'm going to upgrade and go to a lithium-ion rechargeable battery like your Pale Blues that we love and we talked about on the show. Tom's been on multiple times. In fact, I was walking through Home Depot the other day, and I saw that for the same price, there were 24 Duracell batteries for that same price, as 4 of the AA of the Pale Blue. And this confuses folks because they look at it and they go, but there's 4 of those, but I get 24 of the other ones. So I was like, yeah, but that's just recharging the Pale Blue for basically 6 times, and you've got your money back. I know you feel like you're getting more because there's more batteries there, but you're also throwing them out, and you're only using them once. It's like, oh my goodness. So it's funny when you look at this comparison of how these are going. It's also these Yoshinos are quote unquote new, right? I mean, they have not been out on the market for a fair amount of time. There's only 3 ratings on Amazon, so there's not much ratings there. So I think take all that in comparison. In terms of outputs, if we're looking at this, I apologize, we hadn't even thought about talking about this. They do have a good amount of outputs here. They have USB-A, USB-C. I didn't see, Jeff, how much the USB-C are, but let's just talk about recharge on these. They have fast AC recharging, so very similar to the EcoFlows that have that.
100 watt.
They're 100 watt. Okay, perfect. That's what you're looking for, right? AC recharge 0 to 100% in 55 minutes, and we're talking about the B2000 SST. If we look at solar, that has a 600 watt input for 3 hours and car charger for 11 hours off the 120. Okay. They do have what I would say combined charging, so you can do an AC as well as DC. You can go the 1500 watt outlet and 200 watts of solar panels for 47 minutes.
Oh, you know what I just noticed, Mike?
No, I don't.
So here's the thing.
What? Okay, tell me the thing.
This whole 11 pounds thing.
Yeah.
I was looking at the specs, and it wasn't 11 pounds. So the B2000 delivers powerful performance with a battery weight of 11 pounds. If you scroll to the bottom, the whole unit weighs 31.1.
That's still good, though.
I don't discount it.
And here's why I would say good.
I want to make sure
they're not going to discount it for us.
Factual information here on I Like Batteries.
we like to be factual here at I Like Batteries. I would agree. So thank you for that correction. I'm glad we caught it before the end of the show. We wouldn't have to redact our show. That'd be horrible. But you're right, 31.3. But I'm looking at that for my Delta Max, and that's 50 pounds. So 30 pounds is definitely a more doable weight for the amount of power you get, because I think I have probably about the same capacity in my Delta, my original Delta, because I don't have a Delta 2. So yeah, I mean, it's still going to be less weight, which is good. I also wanted to say, just in terms of our listeners, if you're saying, well, what else does it have? They do have a smart app, which is good. Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, so you can connect to it, which we like as well. And what are you getting in the box? Because that's important too. Because sometimes you don't get any cables. They have one AC recharge cable, one cigarette car charging cable,
12 volt socket,
DC plug. Yeah, 12 volt socket. One times female outlet, which is good because if you're outputting. One solar charge cable, MC4 to XT60. So the XT60, the same type of input that the EcoFlow has. Just if you're listening. One standard MC4 solar connection cable, and it comes with a user manual as well.
Wow, how about that? Nice. They don't point you to the web, huh?
It is good. So date first available according to Amazon. So this is when it launched on Amazon, was December 6, 2023.
All right.
So
interesting.
Warranty is 5 years. Just in case you're wondering.
Is it? I think it also has a light on the side.
So yeah. So I think that it does. It does. Yeah. I think it's like one of these things.
Well, but if it's a camping thing, right?
It's fine. I mean, it's not like something.
And you're powering some stuff, and you just put on pop on the LED light, so you can cook dinner. And when it's dark.
This is good. Well, and we want to just say to all those folks too, and just reach out. Why are these important? They're important for a bunch of uses. Everybody who was affected by Tropical Storm Debbie. So when this comes out, obviously that's past, but we hope you're doing okay. This is a great example of why maybe a small power station is something that you want to think about as time goes on, because those small power outages happen, and if you need them, these are great things to be able to. Not only just generate your own power if you had a small solar panel after a major storm, as we seem to be getting more, but also share your power. And what I mean by that is, like, if your friends, family, your neighbors don't have power, this is a great way to be able to say, come over and charge your cell phone so you can talk to somebody and be able to do this. Come charge something up if you need it, your laptop, whatever there is. Come power your lights. I've got my little LED lights that are down here. They run off USB. They provide enough light that I can see in the office here in the basement pretty fine. So our thoughts are for all those folks that are being affected by Tropical Storm Debbie. I guess Debbie's coming to visit us maybe this weekend, Jeff, in New England. So hopefully we don't have the same type of thing. But if we do, we'll be prepared, because you and I both have a power station that can power some things. And hopefully you keep it charged up to 80%. Also maybe fully charged, and I hope that's what our listeners feel as well. So hopefully this has been a good episode. You got some really great stuff out of it, and you stay fully charged, or at least 80% this week.